If you said it, yeah. If you said it, we believe it. If you said I'm healed, if you said it, I believe. If you said it, if you say I'm free in my mind, if you said it, yeah. Yeah. If you said it, yeah. Believe it. Yeah. If you said I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Say, I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. Just I am who you say I am. Say, I am who you say I am. Say, I am who you say I am. You're a son, you're a daughter. I am who you say I am. You'll never forsake it. I am who you say I am. You're the beloved of God. I am who you say I am. 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 Who you say I am. Chosen. If you said it, we believe it. Sing it out, y'all. Say, if you said it, we believe it. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause you're a man of your word. If you said it, we believe it.
Your word is written in stone.
Yeah. If you said it, we believe it. 'Cause you're a man of your word. Yeah.
Your word is written in stone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. It's a thing that we can always count on.
Yeah. You honor your word. You never have to repent, 'cause you'll never go against what you say. Yeah. If you said it, we believe it. 'Cause you're a man of your word. Oh, if you said it, we believe it. You're a man. Let's do it. If you said it, we believe it. You're a man.
And I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am speaks over me. And I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am said he speaks over me. And what you say is true. Say, I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am said he speaks over me.
Yes, he does.
And his word is true. Say, I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am speaks over me.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
And I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am said he speaks over me.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Calls us his
Yes, he
beloved.
does.
Say, I am what I am. 'Cause the great I am said he speaks over me.
My heart is yours completely. My heart is yours totally. You love with no reservation. You're not looking for perfection. there's no need in me pretending. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. You deserve my full attention. Nothing less than my devotion. Oh, speak to me and I will listen. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. Lift it up. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. Yes, you can. Oh, 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 you can. You can.
The Lord of my emotions, set me free from selfish motives, and search me till there's nothing hidden, and I'll give you everything. Yes, I'll give you everything. Sing, oh, oh,
You can have my heart. You can. I belong to you. You can. You can. Every part. Sing it again. You can. It belongs to you anywhere. You can. Oh yeah, oh yeah. My heart is yours forever. Yes, it is. My heart is yours forever. Yes, it is. My heart is yours. My heart, my mind, my soul. My heart is yours forever. My emotions are yours, yeah. My heart is yours forever. All my dreams are yours, yeah. My heart is yours forever. All of my plans are yours. My heart is yours forever. Yeah, yeah.
If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. Yeah, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. Hey, you got it. If you want my heart, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my yes, you got it. You got it. You got it. If you want my all, you got it. You got it.
You can have my heart. Oh yeah. You can have my heart. You can, yeah. You can. Have my heart. Say, you can. Have my heart. I belong to you. I belong to you. You can. I belong to you. I belong to you. Every part All my heart, I belong to you. Nothing missing, I belong to you. Nothing hidden, I belong to you. Yeah, yes, I belong. I cry out, Abba, 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 I belong.
Thanks for joining us today, online or in person at St. Mark's Church. If you're new, please let us know you're here by texting NEW to 64600. We have a welcome gift we would love to send to you. At SMC, our mission for community is to connect people in authentic relationships that lead to spiritual transformation. Life is better together. Community groups play a vital role in helping relationships flourish in the life of the church. In community, we are known, loved, cared for, pursued, encouraged, and challenged to be more like Christ. We have a variety of community groups who meet on a regular basis to connect relationally, study God's Word, and hold each other accountable. If you're interested in joining a group, email Jessica Flake at jessica@exploresmc.org. This Thursday, join SMC and Feed the Hunger to pack meals for people devastated by the Beirut explosion and those impacted domestically by COVID and recent hurricanes. We will be packing at Holly Hill Mall from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. You can sign up at exploresmc.org/events. Thank you for partnering with us to provide meals to so many in need. Do you desire a greater intimacy with God? Do you long for a deep, fundamental change in your life with God? Starting Monday, October 19th on Zoom, join Phil Anderson for Sacred Rhythms, a 6-session study based on the book by Ruth Haley Barton. Each session in this study offers specific spiritual practices that will help you live your life as God created you to live it. If you'd like to give to SMC and our mission of making Jesus famous by becoming more like Him, text SMC Give to 77977, or you can give online at exploresmc.org/give.
How are you doing? It's great to see you. What a beautiful fall morning. Welcome to all of you guys that are in-house, as well as everybody that's watching online and worshiping with us online. It's really great to have you here. My name's Jarm. I'm one of the pastors here at St. Mark's Church, and it's just a pleasure just to welcome you this morning. Hey, a couple of things that are just really exciting that's happening. You know, we've been slowly working our way back on site and on campus, and a couple of things that you could be involved with. Starting November 1st, we're actually going to open back up our kids programming, as well as having live worship back on stage again. So we are really, really excited about that, about having kiddos back in the house. And I kind of miss that, man. I miss all the little rugrats running around here out in the lobby and all of that. So we're really pumped about that. Now, in order for that to happen, though, we are in need of volunteers. Of course, we kind of lost a little bit of ground throughout the pandemic in volunteerism, and rightfully so. People are being very, very careful. But in order to offer those that type of programming, we are in need of some volunteers. So we want you to consider how you might get involved, and we would love to help you kind of find your sweet spot and think about attending and serving in some capacity. Now, for all of you that are still worshiping with us online, and man, we want to hear you. We want you hear us say that is completely fine. We understand, and guess what? We also have opportunities for you to worship or to serve from a distance or outside of groups as well. So we have volunteer opportunities for those that would like to volunteer at a distance. So in order for you to kind of find that sweet spot, what we want to invite you to do is just take out your cell phone at home or here in the house and just text the word I serve, all in one word, I serve, to 64600. And what will happen in the next 2 days, one of our team members will reach out to you via text or by phone. We'll call that number, and we will begin a conversation with you and helping you find that sweet spot for you to serve. Lots of different opportunities for you to serve both on site and also from a distance. And so we were really pumped about November 1st. All right. So hey, let's go ahead and stand, and we can worship with us. If you're in the house, you can stand or sit on the couch. We don't care. We just want to worship together today. So let's invite the band out.
Good morning, St. Mark's Church. Let's worship together.
these walls. I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Oh, sing your promise still stands. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. It's still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, oh faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. Made a way, and there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way, and there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe, oh, I'll see you do it again. Made a way when there was no way, and I believe, oh, I'll see you do it again. I'll see you do it again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail. Oh, you promised still stands. Great is your faithfulness. Faithfulness. Oh, I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me yet. Oh.
I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back.
We want our coffee in the lobby. We watch our worship on a screen. We got a rock star preacher who won't wake us from our dreams. We want our blessings in our pocket. We keep our missions overseas. But for the hurting in our cities, would we even cross the street? But we want to see the heart set free and the tyrants kneel. The walls fall down and our land be healed. But church, if we want to see change in the world out there, it's got to start right here. It's got to start right now. Lord, start right here. Lord, start right now. I'm like the brother of the prodigal who turned his nose and puffed his chest. He didn't run off like his brother, but his soul was just as dead. What if the church on Sunday was still the church on Monday too? What if we came down from our towers and walked a mile in someone's shoes? Cause we want to see the heart set free and the tyrants kneel. Our walls fall down and our land be healed. But church, if we want to see change in the world out there, it's got to start right here. It's got to start right now. The Lord, start right here. The Lord, start right now. We're the people who are called by His name. If we'll surrender all our pride and turn from our ways, He will hear from heaven and forgive our sin. He will heal our land, but it starts right here. We're the people who are called by His name. If we'll surrender all our pride and turn from our ways, He will hear from heaven and forgive our sin. He will heal our land. It's gotta start right here. It's gotta start right now. The Lord, start right here. The Lord, start right now. It's gotta start right here. It's gotta start right now. The Lord, start right here. The Lord, start right now.
So, Spirit of God, we come before you now. You're the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You're the God of amazing grace and the God who stretches your hand of favor across the millennia and all the way into our 21st century world. You're the God who led your people through the desert for 40 years, the same God who tore down walls of Jericho. And you've been deconstructing the walls that divide us ever since. The God who spoke through prophets, but most clearly through Jesus, your Son. So do something in our hearts today so that we can do something in the world tomorrow, and do it in our communities, or wherever we might be engaged, wherever life calls us each day in this broken world. God, be the glory to you. You are faithful, powerful, strong, and we pray in that strong name of Jesus. And those who agreed with the prayer said, amen. And y'all can have a seat. You can sit down at home too if you're still standing up with us. That's a great song. Welcome to St. Mark's Church. My name is Bob, and I'm one of the pastors. If I've never met you before, I hope I can after the service, maybe out in the lobby. I'm not the rock star, so I love that song, but boy, that would be a dangerous thing. But I tell you what we do a lot around here. We talk about grace, don't we? Yeah, we do. We just talk. Hardly a week goes by that we don't speak or at least sing a song that somehow celebrates the goodness and the grace of God. We don't make any apologies for that because, I mean, we don't turn away from focusing a disproportionate amount of our focus on grace. And why would we not do that? Because like the Apostle Paul, he was so very clear with a first generation group of believers in Ephesus. Look at what he said. God saved you by his grace. So we ought to talk about that, and we do a lot. One of my spiritual mentors, mostly through his writings, was a guy named J.I. Packard. He was one of the most famous and influential evangelical leaders of our time. He just passed away a few months ago in July at the age of 93. But look at what he said. He said, grace is like God moving heaven and earth to rescue, redeem, and restore prodigals like me who could not lift a finger to save themselves. Does that resonate with anybody in here besides me? Yeah, you bet. Grace, it's a word, it comes up all the time in our common everyday conversations. We'll sometimes say, well, he fell from grace, or that was an act of saving grace. How many times have we said, well, there, but for the grace of God, go I. We say grace before meals. We talk about a ballet dancer with grace. We sometimes even refer to a leader as your grace. Grace makes a beautiful name for a little girl. One of my favorite people of all times here at SMC was Grace. We affectionately referred to her as Granny Grace. And believe me, she represented her name with grace. There are moments when regular people like us are going through a hard time, and maybe somebody will get up alongside of us and just tenderly remind us of a promise that was made to Paul during a season of his life when he was suffering a lot. He was in a mess. And God communicated, hey, Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, so hang on, he said. Whenever I quote that verse, I'm reminded that grace is that voice that calls me to follow Jesus and obey him. But grace is also the power to pull it off. Isn't that cool? John Newton's 1779 classic hymn, Amazing Grace, is probably the national anthem for the church. Now, the proof that we have grace, as if we need some proof, was when Jesus was spread eagle on a Roman cross. And here's a verse that I committed to memory very soon after I became a follower of Jesus. For I am not ashamed of the gospel. I'm never going to be ashamed of this gospel about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes. And once again, my hero, J.I. Packer, he said, grace, God's grace was revolutionary. He said, it's like God saying yes to us. I like that. God said yes to me a whole lot sooner than I ever said yes to him at the youthful age of 17. Did I need Jesus to become my personal bail bondsman? Are you kidding me? Somebody to pay my ransom to set me free? I didn't deserve it then, don't deserve it now. And Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, he spoke, I think he was speaking for me when he said, while I was still buried in my sin, Christ died for me. That's grace. And believe me, when that starts to sink into our hearts, our attitudes, our values and priorities, when it starts to impact the way we think and act and treat each other, it's a great day. Can we talk about grace? The goal of this fall's preaching series, Simply Jesus. You know, it's so tempting to kind of migrate toward the great stories of Jesus that we all love and cherish. But sometimes we kind of steer clear of those passages that are hard and difficult and kind of mess with us a little bit. So we said several months ago, let's take a couple of months and let's take a look at the whole Jesus. And so today we're gonna do another deep dive into some of the most difficult words Jesus ever spoke. In fact, I'd be surprised if anybody in this room has ever heard a sermon on this one, and there's a reason for that. It's controversial. This passage is maybe even bordering a little bit on outrageous, but before you decide to fake a bathroom break and head out on me, or maybe before those of you watching at home decide to do the clicker and turn me off, remember that none of these narratives have made it into the scriptures by accident. They're all there for a reason. Now, I know that some of you roll your eyes, at least I've heard that, whenever I use props, and I use props a lot in my preaching. Like last week, this piece of broken pottery, this is literally called a crack pot. And we said last week, if you were here, if you were watching, that God has never used one person, with the exception of Jesus. God has never used any person in the history of the world who was not a crackpot. You know why? It's because all he's got to choose from. Isn't that true? So watch this now. When this whole God story was coming into focus, and God was trying to figure out how we're going to get this word out to the whole world. And he looked around and he realized that the only people he had to choose from were a bunch of cracked up people like us. You know what finally occurred to us? We're it. We're all he's got. I mean, now, so just look around real quick. Do we need to be concerned? Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, y'all remember when we were kids and we were playing hide and go seek? The word that we never wanted to hear at the beginning of the game was, "You're it." So just turn to somebody now or point to somebody way over there and say, "You are it. You are all God's got." And that's a fact. All right, so today I'm going to pull up a chair. And I'm going to pretend like, I don't have to pretend anymore, kind of like I'm an aging grandpa. And I'm going to read some poetry to you. Some of y'all hadn't read poetry since, well, a long time ago. But what if I told you that this poetry also has a bunch of pictures? Y'all remember when we were little kids and we'd get assigned a book to read and we had to do a book report? Well, what was the question we always wanted to know? Does it have a lot of pictures? We wanted to. Well, there are a bunch of pictures in this story that I'm going to read to you today. Does anybody recognize this guy right here? This guy's a poet, a screenwriter, an artist, and a filmmaker. His name was Ted Gazelle. He illustrated over 60 books, sold over 60 million books in his lifetime. Maybe this will help you. Theodore Seuss Gazelle, better known to us by his pen name, Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss, by the way, once said, "I always wanted to write stories where kids could see the moral of the story a mile off." That's pretty cool. So you ready for this? Well, it's all I got. We're going to read Dr. Seuss today. The Sneetches. Do you know the story? It's pretty cool. Now, the Starbelly Sneetches had bellies with stars. The plain belly speeches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the Starbelly Sneetches would brag. "We're the best kind of Sneetches on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they would snort. We'll have nothing to do with the plain belly sort." And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right past them without even talking. When the Starbelly children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain belly children had none upon theirs. When the star belly sneetches had frankfurter roasts, or picnics or parties or marshmallow toasts, they even invited the plain bellies. They never invited the plain belly sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain belly sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. My friends, he announced in a voice clear and keen, "My name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need, and my prices are low, and I work at great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed." Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine, and he said, "You want stars like the Starbelly Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard." So they clambered inside. Then the big machine roared, and it clunked, and it bonked, and it jerked, and it burked, and it bopped them about. But the thing really worked. When the plain belly sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start, "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your Frankfurter parties." "Good grief," groaned the ones who had stars at the first. "We're still the best sneetches, and they are the worst. But now, how in the world will we know?" They all frowned. "And which kind of what, or the other way around?" Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, "Things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who. That's perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best sneetches on the beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches." "Belly stars are no longer in style," said McBean. "What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars, so you won't look like sneetches who have them on theirs." And that handy machine, working very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with their snoots in the air, they paraded about, and they opened their beaks, and they let out a shout, "We know who is who. Now there isn't a doubt. The best kind of sneetches are sneetches without." Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. "I'll be wearing a star now," was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, things really got into a horrible mess. All the rest of that day on those wild, screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up sneetches, off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines they raced around and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money, they kept running through, until neither the plain nor the star bellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. No, you just can't teach a sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong. I'm quite happy to say that the sneetches got really quite smart on that day, the day they decided that sneetches are sneetches, and no kind of sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the sneetches forgot about stars and whether they had one or not upon theirs. Give it up for Dr. Seuss. Now, even if you're not a big fan of Dr. Seuss, I can understand that, but you already knew that story, didn't you? You knew what it's like to sometimes be on the inside, or what it's like to be painfully on the outside. We all know what it's like to be included, but we also have a sense of what it's like to be rejected and not chosen. It's probably not a green star, but it could be a tattoo or body piercing. It could be your hair. I mean, don't y'all see hair of all different colors now? I've seen blue and purple this week and a lot of gray. It could be a sign out in your front yard or a flag flying from your house announcing your favorite team or your preferred candidate. In this part of the country, there's a pretty serious divide representing what particular logo you might wear on your favorite sweatshirt that signals your preferred college of choice. It might be something as innocent as the music that you listen to. For me, I'm mostly a sports talk radio junkie. I listen to mostly sports talk, but if I'm dialing in on music, it's almost always either beach music or maybe a little combination of K-Love mixed in. For you, it might be rock or R&B. I've got a friend who has a pickup truck, and he likes to tell me, he said, any button you hit is all going to be about country. We even have a few really weird types that go to this church, and they listen to bluegrass. And I'm telling you what, man, I mean, you got to be a tough person to listen to bluegrass. We're divided on all kinds of things, aren't we? Fast food choices, Apple products, coffee, dark chocolate, pizza toppings, favorite restaurants. We're pretty creative, aren't we, when it comes to drawing lines to figure out, like who's in and who's out. We know what it's like to build bridges. Sometimes we build walls. We say things like, well, you're too young, you're too old, you're conservative, you're a liberal, you're CNN, oh, you're Fox. You drive a pickup, you drive a foreign car. Places where we live, you live in Mebane or maybe Graham, Hall River or West Burlington. The point is, this doesn't go away when we leave middle and high school. Some of you are still worried about the Sneetches, aren't you? You're wondering, how'd the story turn out? Well, there you go. That's our story, by the way. Wouldn't it be great if every story ended this way? If everybody just said, we're just having a big party and everybody's hunky-dory, but that's not the way the world works. Not even close. It's pretty ugly. Seems to be getting a little worse, doesn't it? Now, those of us who are students of history, what we can tell you, not to discourage you, but just it is a fact of life, it's probably going to get worse. Sometimes it does. So what do you think? What do you think the historians are going to write about when they sit down and start to write about this first year of the second decade of the 21st century? Just 10 months ago, when the ball dropped, maybe we were saying, boy, is this going to be the year when we are finally all going to be able to see with 20/20 vision? Fat chance. We knew that we knew at least intuitively that it was probably going to be a loud and contentious year because there was an election coming up. But then February daffodils gave way to March Madness, and what some people were predicting was going to be maybe the most wide open NCAA basketball tournament in decades. College students were wrapping up their midterms, finalizing their plans for spring break. The stock market was hitting records every single week. Not only was the economy in the green, but so was Augusta National. And the Masters golf tournament was just a month away. Life was good. And then we got blindsided by the invasion of an invisible predator. Nobody could have predicted it. And certainly we could not have understood how ruthless this virus would be. I think I've mentioned to you several months ago during the pandemic that it was March the 8th when I first jotted the word corona in my prayer journal. And you know what I referred to it as? A weird virus. That's what I wrote down. There's a weird virus called corona. 5 days after I wrote that prayer, the president declared a national emergency. It was Friday, March 13th. I don't know that we should make anything of the 13th on Friday, but what I can tell you is our staff then had exactly 2 days to figure out how to close the church. We had to go 100% virtual on everything. And what we expected in the conversations were that we would probably, this might last as long as 4 or 5 weeks. And we were talking to each other and we were saying, oh man, we will be roaring back to business on Easter Sunday, which this year was April 12th. Sounds kind of funny now, doesn't it, that we had those conversations? This week I scanned through my prayer journal. This is just 1 week in March. And this kind of gives you a sense of what I was thinking, but probably representing many of you. Tuesday, March 10th. God, our world is gripped by a crazy new virus, corona, and who knows how dangerous it is. Saturday, March 14th. Our entire world is struggling against corona, which has been declared a pandemic infection. But already, I think, right about then, I was beginning to think, well, maybe God is, not that God is causing this, but maybe God is going to use this. So I wrote that same day, I'm praying for redemptive possibilities. God, show your power to turn broken things around. Sunday, March 15th, was the first time I was standing here preaching to an absolutely empty room. And I wrote, just backstage here before I came out here, Corona has shut down every church. God, grab for the glory and use this crisis to wake up a careless world. On Monday the 16th, I wrote, Corona might test our resolve, so bring us back to our senses. Give me wisdom to keep pointing people to the ultimate solution, which in the big picture is not a vaccination, but our Redeemer. So for the first time in my life, we were talking about things across America. We were saying, well, that's essential, and that's not. Nearly every office was on lockdown and virtual. Restaurants were closing by the thousands. Layoffs and furloughs were throwing our families into a panic. The stock market suddenly was in a tailspin. But then the government said, don't worry about tax day on April 15th, as if that were a blessing. Weddings were postponed, funeral services were curtailed, severely leaving families, even in our church, wallowing in their grief without any measure of closure. Hospitals were quarantined, the Masters was canceled indefinitely, as were all the spring sports, everybody from pee-wees to the pros. Nobody could have seen that 2 months later, not only were we fighting against this adversary, but our country would begin to unravel in a brand new awareness of the racial divide. On Memorial Day, an 8-minute, 46-second video from Minneapolis went viral. And George Floyd was on the front page, and America was on fire. Do y'all remember the summer of 2020? I'll tell you what, you know, when I wrote that down this week, I thought, I don't even remember hardly the summer. Maybe I don't know, maybe I was having a lighter moment on Labor Day just 6 weeks ago. Here's what I wrote in my prayer journal. God help me. I wrote, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty together again. And then I wrote, I think somebody shoved Humpty off that wall, and his name might be COVID. And we all felt broken with face coverings. Now what is it? Jobs, elections, Supreme Court nominees, statues, violent protest. Churches are suing state governments because they won't let them open. State governments are suing churches because they're having openings. So what about the people who say, hey, I know there's a problem in the world these days, but hey, come on, Bob, it's not about me. I don't build walls. I don't know why we got to talk about this in church. And what's all this Dr. Seuss stuff? And when are we going to just get back to the Bible? When are we just... Okay, you asked for it. I agree with that, don't you? Well, let's get back to the Bible. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Jesus spends almost his entire 3-year ministry in the region of Galilee. Israel is divided into 3 regions: Galilee in the north, Judea in the south, and Samaria in between. I've told you this many times, he chose a small town on the northwest shores of the Sea of Galilee, the fishing village of Capernaum. This was his headquarters. Everything was kind of launched from there, but there were storm clouds gathering. Jesus is getting deeper and deeper in trouble with the religious authorities of his day. And in Matthew 15, where we're going to be today, Jesus is going to take a modest road trip. It's just going to be a little bit of a detour. It's about a 40-mile trip to the northwest, but he's going to walk right into the heart of an irreligious and idolatrous area of Gentile territory. Today, we would call this area Lebanon and Syria. Jesus is going to make this short little trip. It's a couple days hike to Tyre and Sidon. And how would I say this? These were dark places. These 2 small cities were very ancient. They were 2,000 years old when Jesus was born. So they'd been around for a long time. They were full of, there was overwhelming pagan worship, idolatry. They were occupied by people known as the Canaanites. Now, these people were agnostics to the bone. They worshiped a bunch of counterfeit gods. Tyre and Sidon were so dark. There was temple prostitution, the abuse of women as sex objects. There was human sacrifice, including child sacrifice, and sex trafficking. It was dark, surrounded by darker. Now, for those of you who are seasoned in the Old Testament scriptures, maybe you'll remember that one of the most wicked people who's ever lived on this planet came from Tyre. The wife of King Ahab, her name was Jezebel. And if you remember anything about her story, you can read about it in the Old Testament book of 1 Kings. She was the first person to introduce Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal worship, into Israel. And the whole nation started to unravel 900 years before Jesus. One of the commentators who writes about Matthew 15, he raises a great question. He says, I wonder what a good Jewish boy like Jesus would be doing in a place like that. Well, watch this now, because Mark is telling the same story, but has just a little bit of a different kind of twist. Mark says, then Jesus left Galilee, went north to the region of Tyre. He didn't want anyone to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it a secret. Even in this idolatrous place, his reputation has already begun to spread all the way into this Gentile region. A Canaanite, that would be a Gentile woman from that territory, came to him. Now, a Canaanite, if you were a Jewish person and you said, there's a Canaanite person that wants to talk to you, this was loaded with baggage, because there was a great ethnic wall between Jews and Canaanites. That's just Matthew's way of saying it can't get any worse than this. Jesus interacting with a Canaanite. A Canaanite woman from that territory came to him and began to shout, have mercy. That word, by the way, in the original language means to show compassion. That's beggar language. Beggar. Say, help me. Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented with a demon. A Canaanite Gentile woman begging. She's making a scene. Strange that Jesus doesn't say anything back to her. Not a word. The disciples are probably thinking, come on, Jesus, man, this woman is trouble. Shut her down. She's not going to help us at all. But Jesus, he gave her no reply, not even a word. Then his disciples urged him to send her away. Tell her to go away. They said she's bothering us with her begging. What is this? Is Jesus, why doesn't he say anything? Is he put off, irritated? Does he give that boy a Chick-fil-A sandwich or a candy bar, maybe? No. This is one of the reasons why you've probably never heard a sermon on this passage. This woman is desperate. Her daughter is really sick. And even though she's a Gentile, and presumably that would make her an unbeliever, 3 times in this passage she refers to Jesus as Lord. That's a highly respectful way to address him. What this woman is saying is, Jesus, I've heard of you. I know about you. I've heard about your reputation. I know about your greatness. I'm not here because I deserve you to do anything for me, but I'm begging you. My daughter is really sick. Can you help her? So we have a Gentile woman, a Canaanite, begging Jesus for help. So what would he do? Well, he seizes the moment as an opportunity to teach. Jesus points out that we build walls to separate ourselves from other people. We could use our energies to build bridges. So he's going to do a little teaching here. Here's Jesus in the very heart of an irreligious culture, surrounded by evil on top of evil, reminding his disciples, this is why I came up here. Jesus is beginning to show the whole world that his mission is all about crossing over boundaries. Not just knocking down walls, although he knocked down a bunch. But his mission was to reach across cultures, beyond religious traditions, and to reach around racial and ethnic boundaries. Hey, did you ever have a teacher in school? Maybe a professor in college. And this was a creative person who didn't just give you the facts and the data and the information so that you could memorize it and then give it back to her on an exam. Let me tell you what, when I was at Duke Divinity School a generation ago, I had some fabulous teachers, theologians who were like artists. I've shown you this picture before. This is Father Roland Murphy. He was the Old Testament scholar at Duke when I was there. He was one of the leading Old Testament scholars in the world in his day. I took every class that he ever offered during the 4 years I was there. I would sit in his class, and he would paint a masterpiece with words from the Old Testament narratives, 2,500 years old. That's what Jesus is doing right here. Jesus could have said, hey guys, listen. This woman matters to the Father. Her little girl's having some trouble. I care about both of them, so deal with it. No. Jesus is an expert at drawing pictures, at creating an experience so that people remember the moment. But he's also creating some tension here. Our preaching professor, when I was in the same seminary, Dr. John Berglund, he used to say, he would say, guys, sometimes you need to create tension in the introduction of your sermon so that maybe by the time the sermon ends, you can safely land that plane so the sermon doesn't crash. But create some tension and then work it out. And I think that's what Jesus was doing. The easiest thing Jesus could have done would have been just to simply answer her. He certainly had the power to do so. Ma'am, it's nice to have a conversation with you. Go home. Your daughter is fine. But he doesn't do that. He wants a relationship with this woman. He wants her and his disciples to never forget this moment. But don't miss this. Jesus is about to unmask the prejudice of his disciples. Do you know that word prejudice? It simply means you prejudge somebody before you know the whole story. I don't like me when I do that. So, and I assume most of you don't either. So what if we allow ourselves, can I pull you into the story, into the tension? Who are the people that you would be most likely to exclude? Where do you draw lines? Oh, Bob, man, I love the whole world. I doubt it. You have some sandpaper people in your world, just like I do. There are people in your life and you have a hard time saying, yeah, I reckon they matter to God. Who are the plain belly sneetches in your world? What if I gave you a few examples to show you how this works? Now, there's somebody on that screen right there that you love to hate. There's somebody on there that represents a group of fans and you think they're obnoxious. Or what about, here's some rivalries that, look at this list. Now, you very seldom have people just to show up and say, well, I could pretty much go either way. Just look at that. No, that's a pretty clear line down the center of that. What about some faces that, you just see a face and it draws some fire and hostility, especially in an election year. If you see these two things. Now that's creating, what's this? Are we feeling, are we creating a little bit of tension? How about this one? So how do you know if you're treating somebody as an outsider? Well, sometimes it could be measured by how you talk about them behind their backs, what you say about them on Twitter or Facebook, the jokes you tell about them. People you exclude or include, the way you automatically some of you could just jump to a conclusion by seeing one of those faces. Have you ever been on the outside looking in? Have you ever been excluded? Probably about 5 years ago, Susan and I talked about this week, and so it's been a while, maybe 5 years ago. We had one of those invisible moments. Have you ever been invisible? Some friends invited us to accompany them to what we thought was going to be a very nice, quiet dinner, and it was awful. We even knew some of the people there, but the people were looking right past us. Like, are we invisible? Sometimes they would glance in our direction and it was like, what are you doing here? How'd you get in? Now, I knew some of the people in there, and some of them I knew they attended church, but they weren't treating us like you would think church people might. We got in the car after dinner, and I said, oh, boy, that was awkward. And Susan, she is probably the softest, kindest, most unpretentious person in the world. She said, I can't remember the last time I felt so much like we didn't belong here. Later, when we got in bed, I said, that wasn't very much fun. But I said, Susan, for us, it was a couple of hours. For some people, it's every day. The point is, it's really hard when you get excluded or ignored. I'm fortunate. I don't often get lumped in a group called the outsiders, or like we talked about those last week, those people. But for some people, it's a way of life. And you know what? It happens here. And it must break the heart of God. I know people talk about me behind my back. They make things up that I've never said. But I don't fret that, because I always get called back to this passage in John 15. And Jesus said, if the people of this world hate you, just remember they hated me first. If you belong to the world, its people would love you. But you don't belong to the world. I've chosen you to leave the world behind. And that's why its people hate you. I have friends that get excluded and rejected every week. This week, I just jotted down some reasons why some people get excluded. Sometimes it's a political thing. Maybe you got the wrong bumper stickers. It could be because of economic status. Maybe you just don't quite live in the right neighborhood. It could be overeducated, undereducated. Single people get ignored all the time. We get isolated because of the clubs or the groups that we belong to or not, the church we attend. Our priorities and values sometimes create separation. Let me tell you, when some people find out that you have a solid, strong Christian worldview, they'll say to you, the Bible went out of style a long time ago. How naive can you be? People get left out because of their age, their skin color, their ethnic background. Maybe they have a disability, or even sometimes it's sexual orientation. Let me probe just a little bit deeper into the walls that divide us. 80% of us have a social media profile. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. 7 out of 10 teenagers check their media 5 or more times a day. And many of them are addicted to how many likes they get. It's called FOMO, fear of missing out. Screen time is going up every single year, and so is depression among teenagers. Now, every teenager has mood swings. We understand that. Every teenager spikes an attitude once in a while. But the pressures on adolescents, they've got physical changes. Their relationships are sometimes crazy and volatile. Their self-esteem is often always all wrapped up in how they look. And some of that's motivated by media. Suicide is the second leading cause of death. People between the ages of 15 and 24. Slightly more than 6,000 suicides every year in this country in that age group. And much of it is being connected to loneliness and feelings of being left out and excluded. Houston, we have a problem. People get devalued for many reasons. Person's too young, doesn't have enough experience. I get that. Some of you are treated a certain way simply because you are a woman. I have a black friend who attends this church, and I asked him when was the last time you felt excluded? And he said, you mean in the lobby at SMC? He said, sometimes the people at the church act like I don't exist. They walk right by me. And I said, here? And he smiled and let me off the hook. You know what he said? He said, I always think about St. Mark's it's like an emergency room in the hospital. He said, people come in and out of this place every week, and they're hurting and they're sad. Some are lonely. And you know what, Bob? Hurting people sometimes hurt people. We all have these invisible walls. You can't see an invisible wall, but it's there. It's real. It's painful. And listen to me, it's optional. Do you know why the Jesus strategy was to build bridges and knock down walls? One thing, proximity. That was his commitment. He crossed over whatever the imaginary or the real boundaries were. He listened, he learned. One of my best African-American friends on planet Earth likes to remind me, he says, Bob, hey, me and you, we're good, brother, because we're chasing after the same king. One of the greatest lessons that Jesus ever taught us, guys, was that the mission and vision, God's mission and vision on this planet would forever be to reach across whatever barriers are keeping people separate and to reach as many of those people as possible. The message of Jesus that day in Tyre and Sidon was, okay, I agree, guys. I've come for the lost sheep of Israel. I have come for the lost, but make no mistake about it, he was telling his guys, we will reach across the divide to a Canaanite woman who needs to know the Father. A generation later, the Apostle Paul will speak to a group of Jesus followers, and they were living in a very dark culture as well in the city of a Greek city of Corinth. Wide open culture in those days, Sin City. Look at this, what he said. Even though I am a free man, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring Jews to Christ. When I was with those who follow the Jewish law, I too lived under that law. Even though I am not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who were under the law. When I am with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from that law so that I can bring them to Christ, but I continue to obey the law of Christ. When I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news. So jump back quickly with me to this desperate woman. The disciples seriously wish that she were invisible, that she would disappear. It's a really awkward moment, but Jesus is not going to take his foot off the gas. It's tense because he wants to make sure, guys, do you get it? Her need was great. Her daughter was very sick, but her trust was greater. She came to Jesus, bowed down, and said, Lord, help me. Now, these men have been with Jesus day and night for a long time, and they're not getting it, but this woman did. They had to come all the way into 40 miles up the road into the land of the Gentiles, the regions of the outsiders, the people who lived on the other side of the wall. They had to come into the land of the flat-bellied sneetches to hear Jesus say, for God so loved the world that he gave his son for everyone. Dear woman, Jesus said, your faith is great. Your request is granted. And her daughter was instantly healed. Do you remember a sermon from a few weeks ago? No, you don't remember. You don't remember what you had for dinner Friday night? Okay, so let me refresh your memory. Jesus is in a boat with his group. They're crossing over the Sea of Galilee. A violent, unexpected storm is threatening to sink their small boat. Jesus calms the storm down. And do you remember what Jesus said to them? Why are you so afraid? You surely don't have much faith. The Canaanite woman, what did he say to her? Your faith is great. These guys get a C+ on the faith exam. This Canaanite woman gets an A+. It's a difficult and strange story. I'll grant you that. You think these Gentiles with their pagan gods and exclusions and marginalized from the Father, you think they were confused? So what is God saying to us? Let me illustrate that. I'll take you back 30 years and then send you out. Maybe you remember this. Some of you don't because you were either too young or you weren't born yet. But on August the 2nd, 1990, a madman dictator in Iraq, Saddam Hussein, he launched an invasion of their neighboring state, Kuwait, creating a firestorm of pushback around the world, especially here in America. Our president was George H.W. Bush. He immediately formed a coalition. Watch this now. He formed a coalition of 40 nations, multiple governments, colors, ethnic groups, cultures, religious traditions, personalities, resources, along with 697,000 American troops, and some of those men go to this church. The coalition warned Mr. Hussein that his evil aggression would not be tolerated. He refused to budge. After a number of warnings from the coalition, our president announced a major attack of coalition forces on Iraq. It was called Operation Desert Storm. 6 weeks of air attacks followed by a ground campaign that lasted 100 hours. A total of 38 days and the war was over. This enormous, overpowering, unified coalition was celebrating success. Friends, let me tell you, there's another enemy on the loose in our day. He is not an egotistical madman or an evil tyrant, but Jesus once described his mission. He said, this enemy will kill, steal, and destroy. So God responded and started to build a coalition to serve notice to the adversary that your time is limited, old buddy. Do you remember the children's song we used to love as kids? When we started, it was our way of talking about God's alliance. You remember the song, Red and Yellow, Black and White? God's coalition is like that. It includes thousands of local churches in every city, town, suburb, and village. And when people go to war, let me tell you, when people are at war, nobody cares about color and culture and race or any of the other barriers that separate us, as long as we're shooting at the same enemy and not shooting each other. A couple of thousand years ago, Jesus showed up. He was the captain of the Lord's army, and he made it clear. Jesus said, I've not come here to take sides. I'm here to take over. And the message was really clear. I'm going to assemble an army, and we are going to build an invincible coalition with one mission. We will save and redeem this world, one life at a time. I was talking to a guy in my office just this week, and he's in a frustrating season of life, some unsettling stuff going on, mostly job frustration, and we can all get that. And he said, Bob, I think I'm the only Christian in my company, in the whole company. And I said, you mean God has trusted you with that company? God said yes to me from an old rugged cross 2,000 years ago, and it took me a while to figure out how to say yes back to him. I was 17 years old, and the message was clear, and I got started, and here's why. For Christ himself united Jews and Gentiles into one people in his body on the cross. He broke down the wall of hostility that separated us. He made peace between Jews and Gentiles by creating one new people from the two groups. Jesus reconciled both groups to God by means of his death on the cross, and our hostility toward each other was put to death. Martin Luther King said it like this: we all came over on different ships, but we're all on the same boat now. My friends, the wall has already been destroyed. Say yes to Jesus and go build a bridge and plead with God. Do it again. Love you, SMC.
Sing this again together. I've seen you move. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. Move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I've seen you move, yeah. You move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do, yes you will. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never sing that out, church. Your promise promise still stands. This is faithfulness, faithfulness. Oh, I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never failed me yet. Oh, never failed me yet. Amen. Have a great week, church. Thanks for joining us.
I don't know about you guys, but I needed that this morning. Yeah, let's. I'm gonna have a real simple, real short prayer. But let me, before I pray, let me invite you. If you are here today, or you're watching online, and you would like some help in your spiritual journey, that's why the church is here. It's to help us take whatever steps we need to take towards Jesus. Whether it's your first step, or you've been following Jesus for decades, and you just, you need some refresher. We would love to help you find community and whatever resources that you're needing to continue or to start your relationship with Jesus in your spiritual journey. So on your way out this morning, you can stop by Next Steps. We have some wonderful staff members and volunteers that would be glad to answer any questions you have. If you're new here, we would love to just to get your information, just to know that you're here and just to welcome you, answer any questions you have. So welcome if you're here new, or if you're new watching us online. All you have to do is text the word new to 64600. And we'll be reaching out to you and making sure that you have what you need in your spiritual journey. All right? Hey, let's go ahead and pray. Father, I just have a real simple prayer. Please help us, empower us to be people of the common ground, to be a part of that coalition that Bob was talking about in this world. Help us to be people of unity, and the people that help others find you. And thank you for being that for us. Thank you for being that peacemaker. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday afternoon.
Every room belongs to you.